One less Democrat running for president.
Surprise, surprise. Guess who it is?
I don't know.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio pulled the plug on his White House bid today. He made the announcement earlier on Morning Joe. Take a look.
But I have to tell you at the same time, I feel like I've contributed all I can to this primary election. And it's clearly not my time, so I'm going to end my presidential campaign, continue my work as mayor of New York City, and I'm going to keep speaking up for working people.
CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is here to discuss. So I was jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, saying surprise, surprise, but it really isn't that much of a surprise because he had been polling at zero, and you didn't really see the kind of field operation that you normally see for a presidential candidate. In other words, ramping up and opening an office in Iowa, hiring a huge amount of staffers. In fact, you rarely saw him unless it was on a debate stage.
Well, and he didn't make the last debate stage.
And he didn't make the last
one. He didn't make the last one. And, you know, from the very beginning, he kind of struggled to make a case for why him and why now. When he got in, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren were already in the race representing that progressive wing of the party and having built, to your point, a big, robust operation for both of them. And so he did make some impact on the debate stages when he made the debate stage, going after Joe Biden repeatedly and kind of making the case for where the party he believes should go. But he wasn't the person to like carry that mantle, right? I mean, someone else was doing it. And he wasn't popular. He wasn't getting anybody really at his events that he did in the early states. He'd get very small crowds. New Yorkers were not supportive of this bid at all. In fact,
because he's never here.
He's not here. A New York poll came out a few days ago showing him at 0% among New Yorkers.
Wow.
So it was just really hard for him to see a path from the very beginning. And I think a lot of people had questions about why he was doing it in the first place.
So Vlad sort of jokingly said, surprise, surprise. A little sarcasm there, right? The president tweeting very sarcastically about it as well. But then sort of it begs the question. So no one's surprised about this. So it begs the question, why embark on a challenge like this that you're probably going to lose anyways? Sometimes people do this sort of thing for other reasons.
Absolutely. A lot of people run for president for another kind of job, right? What's interesting about him, though, is that he has this massive platform as the mayor of New York City. And a lot of people kind of wondered, why not just use that perch to talk about the ideas that you want to talk about? Why does it have to be the presidential race? He was making the case when he got in that that was the best avenue to make his case, he thought, but he wasn't able to gain traction. And there are also several other mayors in the race, current and former, who have been able to make that case better than he. But we did hear from a New Yorker today, the president himself tweeting sarcastically about de Blasio's bid. So that is an interesting rivalry.
I thought the president's tweet was, you know, let's remember the president is a New Yorker, right? And so New Yorkers, sometimes it felt almost as if he put aside the presidential hat for a moment and said, let me do like what New Yorkers do.
Let's not go down.
For, you know, and you know, like,
oh no, really big political news, perhaps the biggest story in years.
Part-time mayor. Part-time mayor of New York City.
These are two people that like going after each other. Remember when de Blasio got in, he made this kind of specifically about Donald Trump, saying that he was ready to take this fight to him.
So all right, so let's talk some of the other candidates right now. Most of the polls have a few of the candidates all bunched at the top, and then there's a big drop with several others that are failing to even crack 2%. Given that Mayor Bill de Blasio has dropped out, who else could potentially look at the road ahead and say, you know what, it's not worth it?
Well, I think the debate criteria has really had a huge impact on this race. I think when we're looking at various themes to figure out how the field is narrowing down, I think these debates and the DNC rules about the debates, getting into them, has had an outsized impact. And so what we can take away from de Blasio dropping out and some others who have not made the debate stage is that this is having a real impact on narrowing the field months and months and months before voters actually start weighing in. So you have several candidates who did not make the last one, who are not likely to make the next one, and you have some very interesting people on that list. Governors, Governor Steve Bullock from Montana has not made the debate. Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado hasn't either. They insist on plugging along. Tulsi Gabbard, the congresswoman, is close to making the debate stage for next time, hasn't quite made that threshold. And so if you don't make this next debate, it's really difficult to see see how you can continue to make your case forward. And we're starting to see, at least in polling, what our Battleground Checker polls, is that voters are looking at this field in terms of tiers, that it's still a little bit fluid, but we do have like a top tier emerging. That's Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris in some polls, Pete Buttigieg in some others, and even Beto O'Rourke, because he comes from Texas and can have some potential to win some delegates.
Cory Booker, is he in that list?
Cory Booker is still kind of polling lower down, around 2% or so. But look, all of these candidates, we talk to these campaigns all the time, and they insist that places like Iowa are places where underdogs can perform well, that there is still room for surprise, that we're seeing some fluidity in this race still. So that's what people are making the bet on.
Let me ask you, Tom Steyer is made the debate, and he's somebody who we haven't seen at any of the debates. How did he do it, first of all? And I mean, is there an opportunity there for him, or is this sort of a last dying gasp?
He has
for
a
relevancy?
lot of money to spend to make the debate stage, and if he will be on that stage in October. I think that he will be kind of the punching bag for a lot of the candidates on the stage, because being a billionaire in this Democratic primary is not the kind of person you want to be. I mean, you hear Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and others, exactly. So it is difficult to see a path for him. It's difficult to see what his constituency really is. But the fact that he was able to spend a lot of money to gain supporters, because you have to get those grassroots donations, spending a lot of money on air and digital advertising, shows that, why some of these candidates who didn't make the stage think these rules.
Can I ask you one last question, Caitlin? And that's some of the think pieces that I've been reading, which seem to indicate that even as Democrats galvanize behind certain really big, important issues and policies that they'd like to see enacted in this country, the overarching theme seems to be beat Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
If you're a Democrat. And even with the things that could make Americans' lives better, in other words, the policies that the individual folks running for office are proposing, people are like, yeah, that's great. But can you beat Donald Trump?
Well,
and that seems to be why Biden continues to poll higher than the others.
I'm just recalling Jill Biden essentially saying that not too long ago. Like, look, you may not like my husband, but you should probably vote for him.
Exactly. And our polling reflects that, and every voter that we talk to on the ground lists that as their top priority. Going back to January, when I was with Elizabeth Warren on her first campaign trip in Iowa, she was the first to get on the campaign trail. Voters even then were saying that they're putting aside policy differences, they're putting aside their own kind of personal interests for the sake of finding a candidate who can beat Trump. But it's interesting when you look at the numbers that as Elizabeth Warren is rising, more of her supporters are starting to think that she is that person. So that's the case the campaign has been trying to make. Earlier this week, as we talked about, she was saying that, a person that can beat Donald Trump, in her view, is someone that incites passion in people and kind of galvanizes and creates a movement. Joe Biden is making the case that he is the most electable, that people know him and they feel like they can trust him, and that he is the best position to do that. So he's shown some durability in his campaign, and we'll see kind of how this evolves.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much.